Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Vital Dissent. I'm your host, as always, Patrick McFarlane. This one is episode 280, and the show notes may be found at vitaldissent.com/280. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about nonprofit efforts to prosecute individual Israeli soldiers in the IDF for war crimes and crimes against humanity. So jumping right into it here, my interest was kind of piqued on this when I saw a tweet from Max Blumenthal, and he quote tweeted Mossad commentary, which I don't think is an official account that's really like connected to the Israeli government. However, he says, this is another tacit confession that the IDF is conducting the Holocaust of our time. The Hind Foundation, the Hind Rajab Foundation, has really shaken the Zionist genocide regime. So he quote tweets this, or rather he took a screen grab of a tweet by Mossad commentary, probably for posterity. And it says, please share, two soldiers of the IDF. Do not post a picture of yourself in the battlefields of Gaza or elsewhere. Do not even post at all on social media. There's a group that their job is to identify IDF soldiers and send the information to countries that you may be visiting at some point. And you may be arrested. Your vacation will turn into a nightmare. So this was posted on December 11th, which is 2 days ago as of recording, from Earth, it says. It has 470,000 views. So there's another tweet here from the Hind Rajab Foundation, and I think it was associated with Max's tweet. It says, Haaretz reports that Israel fears that our ICC case naming 1,000 soldiers is a serious threat. This shows our strategy of legally targeting individual soldiers is effective. Israel is worried, so we're on the right track. Volunteer or support at hindrajabfoundation.org. And I'm going to go to their website here, and we're just going to be talking about this strategy, the viability of it, how it works with the ICC, because if you go back into our archives, we talked a bit about the ICJ and the ICC and their role in the Gaza conflict, the Palestinian conflict. Some will say the Gaza genocide. I do believe at this point it is a genocide. I think there's at least a prima facie case that it is a genocide. We covered that in other episodes here. I'll put those at the show notes page. Here's the web page for those of you watching the video version of this. The Hind Rajab Foundation, hindrajabfoundation.org. About us, it says, we're devoted to breaking the cycle of Israeli impunity and honoring the memory of Hind Rajab and all those who have perished in the Gaza genocide. We are driven by a profound commitment to justice, seeking to hold perpetrators accountable and ensuring that the stories of the victims are never lost to history. Through our efforts, we aim to build a world where such tragedies are not only remembered but prevented, fostering a future rooted in accountability, dignity, and justice for all. So we focus on offensive legal action against perpetrators, accomplices, and inciters of war crimes and crimes against humanity in Palestine. We also invest in awareness campaigns to challenge Israeli impunity and honor the memory of the victims. So it's named after an individual. Looks like a very sweet-looking young girl, Palestinian. She was 5 years old. She was trying to escape bombardment. Their car was mercilessly targeted by an Israeli tank in an attack that can only be described as a war crime. She survived the initial barrage only to be left alone in the blood-soaked car, surrounded by the bodies of her loved ones. So there's a mural to her. So this is an activist organization. Now, I'm not saying that makes them not credible on their face, but do realize, of course, they are a partisan organization they have an ideology behind them, and that's what motivates them. The Hind Rajab Foundation is located in Brussels, in Belgium. It's a Belgian nonprofit. And I'm going to be going through a few of their particular cases that they've been working on. But let's take the other look here. There is, let's see, where did I put my tab? I put it under, I have a lot of tabs open. Here it is. Okay. Netanyahu files. Nope, that's not it. Wait, yes, this is it here. Sorry. So, pro-Palestinian groups press for charges against Israeli soldiers who served in Gaza, and this is the story that was on Twitter that Amir, the Hindra Job Foundation, put up. It's written by Amir. His name, the Israeli author, is Amir Tiban. And now I lost my tab again. Christ. Okay. Pro-Palestinian groups press for charges against Israeli soldiers who served in Gaza. Israeli officials are concerned that these efforts, combined with genocide allegations at the ICJ, could expose soldiers to legal proceedings in various countries. So, Amir Tiban, this is published October 16th, 2024 in Haaretz. It says, pro-Palestinian groups have increased efforts in recent months to prompt international legal proceedings against Israeli soldiers who have served in the war in Gaza. Israel fears that the combination of these efforts and proceedings at the International Court of Justice, where Israel has been accused of committing genocide in Gaza, may end up exposing officers and soldiers to legal proceedings. So, again, we've covered on this show, go back into the previous episodes, the difference between the ICJ and the ICC. The ICJ goes after countries and the ICC goes after individuals. Now, it seems that on Twitter that Hindra Job, whoever runs the Twitter account, is saying that this is, signs that what they're doing is working, which it very well could be. But does it necessarily show criminal culpability that Israeli officials are worried about the possibility of these proceedings going on and targeting individual soldiers? I mean, if we take into account that, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that the vast majority of IDF soldiers are not involved in war crimes, right? Let's devil's advocate. And they're concerned about this. It would be a legitimate concern to have frivolous lawsuits be filed harassing your soldiers as they go abroad. And, as we know that not all Israeli members of the IDF, not all of them are only Israeli citizens. A lot of them, from my understanding, are dual citizens or they're foreign nationals who are serving in the IDF. So, and we're going to talk a bit more about jurisdiction and how that comes into play here, because neither the United States nor Israel are signatories to the Rome Statute that gives the ICC their jurisdiction to prosecute these cases. Last week, a pro-Palestinian organization in Belgium filed a complaint with the International Criminal Court, citing the names of about 1,000 Israeli officers and officers it says violated international law. The organization said it attached documents of these soldiers and men collected from social media to the complaint. An Israeli source told Haaretz that legal and political officials are aware of this issue. However, the source said that Israel had not yet examined the list of names that the organization had sent or the alleged evidence. Human rights lawyer Itay Mack, who also specializes in international law, says that the chances of the complaint resulting in the ICC taking action against the soldiers and officers are quite low. In August, ICC prosecutor Karim Khan asked the court to issue arrest warrants against Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, but the panel of judges has not issued them. Mack believes the court is in no hurry. Remember, this came out in October. Mack believes the court is in no hurry to consider alleged evidence against junior officers and soldiers when it's still reviewing the request to issue warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant. So I don't necessarily disagree with this analysis from Itay Mack. Now, of course, in the law, as in many other things, different people have different opinions on things, and they might not be, some might be more correct than others. But it's not like the law, as we've covered in this show, the law is not always like an objective thing that you can just put a calculation in and it spits out an answer. Max says Israel's main concern should be the list of soldiers getting a life of its own and be published around the world, which could result in legal action in certain countries. If the list includes people with citizenship of certain countries, it might be possible to act against them in those countries and prevent them from visiting them, he says. If there are people who are employed by foreign companies or plan to study abroad, they might try to hurt their livelihoods or academic studies. Now, I'm not in favor of witch hunting people, right? I just don't. I believe in the due process of law, and I don't believe in witch hunting. And I think that there's a delicate balance between witch hunting and legitimate prosecutions that are backed by evidence. And I think that key piece is evidence, but also due process. And one of the problems you run into is that different countries within their own legal systems have different. I don't know if we've talked about the Amanda Knox case on this podcast before, but the Amanda Knox case is very famous. She is a American student that was studying abroad in Italy, and I think after a night out of partying or something, someone murdered her roommate that she was staying with at this hostel or like a study abroad. I think this other person was a foreign. Like, I don't know the facts of the case that well. All I know is that she was arrested and tried and convicted for killing this person when there was like little to no evidence that she had actually done it. And there was another person who, there was another suspect who just wasn't charged. And through years long process, she was finally exonerated. But throughout the whole thing, it appeared like apparent that the Italian courts are just like a kangaroo court, that fundamental safeguards for due process that we have in the United States and just don't exist. And it creates miscarriages of justice. Now, when you have IDF soldiers who are citizens of so many countries around the world, there is legitimate concern that these people would be targeted in countries where legal systems don't have fundamental judicial due process safeguards. And I do recognize that that's a real concern. There are several countries in which local pro-Palestinian groups are pushing for legal proceedings against Israeli soldiers. In Norway, a human rights organization has asked for an investigation into all Israelis entering its jurisdiction to verify that they did not participate in war crimes in Gaza. Now, I don't agree with this. I think it's, in order to, at least in the United States, in order to surveil or search someone, you should have probable cause, right? Some kind of, you can't just blanket surveil and stop and start investigations against people just because they're Israeli. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be able to do that. South Africa's foreign minister has said that any of its citizens who served in the Israeli military should be stopped for questioning if they enter the country. Now, that's a little more understandable, right? Because apparently in Norway, they're stopping every Israeli. But in South Africa, if its citizens served in the IDF, then they should be stopped for questioning if they enter the country. I think that's more understandable. In France, pro-Palestinian organizations are working to identify Israeli soldiers with French citizenship to try to pursue measures against them. Several South American countries, which are often destinations for Israeli tourists after their military service, have seen similar efforts. Whether these efforts are successful depends in part on the ICJ proceedings against Israel to determine whether it has committed a genocide in Gaza. The proceedings initiated by South African complaint, we've covered that. But they're saying that if there's a finding against Israel that Israel is committing genocide, then it might open the floodgates for activist organizations to label all Israeli soldiers as parties to a genocide and demand investigations against them. So, I think that is kind of legitimate, right? If the organization that you're a part of has been deemed to be committing a genocide, then it should, prompt investigations into individuals. But I tend to, like, there's a question, right? There's a question there of, well, if the organization is committing genocide, is it open season that everyone as a part of that organization, that there's automatically probable cause against them to start an investigation? I don't think you don't need probable cause necessarily to start an investigation. But we should get more specific. Like, what are we doing? Like, so in the United States, if a police officer is, has evidence that there's a drug dealer living in a certain house, like, he doesn't need a warrant or any kind of evidence to case the house. He would need some kind of evidence to get a search warrant or to arrest that person. And I guess it depends on what is the definition of what is the investigation going on against these people? Are they being detained? Are we looking into open sources? I think that's a fair question to ask to see how these unfold, and I think it's very interesting. One thing that I do know is that there are Telegram channels out there, and there is media being shared from within Israeli social media. And when I say Israeli, I mean amongst Israelis on Telegram and other channels like that, of war crimes being committed. That soldiers are posting their war crimes on Telegram and other sources, and that there are groups of Israelis who are showing war crime footage, and they're circulating it and they're celebrating it, and doing things like that. I do know that that does exist, and I'm not going to show any of it on the podcast because it's on YouTube or that kind of thing. But let's see if I can't. I'll just pause this recording and pull up an article. Okay, and here's an article from Al Jazeera. Why are Israeli soldiers sharing snuff videos from their genocide in Gaza? This is from January 24th of 2024, so this is a while ago. Israeli soldiers are filming themselves mocking Palestinians is the subheader on the video for this article. It says, since the beginning of the genocide in Gaza in October, Israeli soldiers have been posting what can only be described as snuff videos on social media platforms. In the video, soldiers can be seen often gleefully committing war crimes against Palestinians. In one video, an Israeli soldier dressed in a dinosaur costume loads artillery shells into a tank and dances as the shells are fired in the direction of Gaza. In another video, a soldier is filmed dedicating an explosion to his 2-year-old daughter for her birthday. Seconds later, a Palestinian residential building behind him is blown up. Other videos show Israeli soldiers setting alight Palestinian food supplies during a starvation campaign and mocking stripped, rounded up, and blindfolded Palestinian civilians. And I'm trying to find more examples because let's see. Yeah, so I'm not going to read the whole article, but this is just one example, and those are a couple factual examples of it. But what I'm trying to say here is that I understand this a lot more, these organizations going after individual Israelis when they have IDF members, I should say. When these IDF members are posting themselves, they're filming themselves and posting those videos of them committing war crimes. And if there's other investigations going on that involve testimony or some kind of evidence to be continuing this. And I think it's wholly legitimate for these organizations to be doing that when they have actual evidence. And it's nice. I think the scalpel-like precision of finding this evidence that I hope amounts to some kind of burden of proof and taking that to a court and asking the court to take action, I think is a good way to do this. And again, I'm not necessarily for vigilante mob justice unless there's been some kind of proceeding going on. And if we go to the ICC and look at delving more into, let's go to the Hind Rajab Foundation and look at specific cases. So Hind Rajab, here's one, June 12th, 2024. I think that's the most recent one that I can find, maybe October 2024. HRF files legal action in Ecuador against Ecuadorian citizen who participated in assault on El Shifa Hospital in Gaza. So this is from October 24th of this year. Here's a picture of the Ecuadorian individual, and it's at El Shifa Hospital. The Hind Rajab Foundation, in partnership with the March 30 movement, has filed a groundbreaking legal complaint against the Ecuadorian authorities, or with the Ecuadorian authorities. The complaint targets Ecuadorian citizen Sahar Enrique Cohen for his involvement in war crimes and crimes against humanity committed during the Israeli military's assaults on Gaza. The complaint, submitted to the Criminal Court of Guayas, seeks prosecution under Ecuadorian and international law for Cohen's participation in systematic attacks on Palestinian civilians and medical facilities. There's a read more here. I'm hoping there's a bit more. Um, let's see. Key allegations. Cohen is accused of taking part in the March 18th. And let me stress that these are allegations against this individual. And these are not facts. These are allegations. And I would presume this individual to be innocent until proven guilty, or there's some kind of preliminary hearing, or the complaint is not dismissed due to lack of probable cause. The assault led to the deaths of numerous patients, including children and the elderly, due to the destruction of critical medical facilities and the international denial of life-saving resources. These actions fall under the definitions of genocide and crimes against humanity, according to international law. The complaint outlines horrific instances of torture and persecution committed against Palestinian civilians. These acts included physical and psychological abuse, forced nudity, rape, and deprivation of food and water. These were systematic measures designed to eradicate the Palestinian population. They call on Ecuador to apply Article 14 of the Comprehensive Organic Criminal Code, which allows the country to prosecute crimes committed beyond its borders if they violate international human rights laws. Cohen's involvement in these grave violations make him subject to Ecuadorian jurisdiction. Okay, that's one instant. Let's hear more about the complaint against 1,000 Israeli soldiers. This is October 8th of 2024. From The Hague, the Hin Rajab Foundation, a branch of the March 30 movement, has filed an unprecedented and historic complaint. I mean, you can read that as maybe being novel, maybe being baseless, that it's never been done before, but sometimes things happen for the first time and they're legit. So with the International Criminal Court against 1,000 Israeli occupation forces soldiers for war crimes against humanity and genocide in Gaza, Palestine. These individuals, all of whom have been identified by name, are accused of participating in systematic attacks against civilians during the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This complaint, supported by over 8,000 pieces of verifiable evidence, including videos, audio recordings, forensic reports, and social media documentation, demonstrates the soldiers' direct involvement in these atrocities. All of the named soldiers were located in Gaza during the genocidal assault, and the evidence reveals their participation in violations of international law. So here's an overview. Including destruction of civilian infrastructure, targeted attacks on homes, hospitals, schools, markets, mosques, and other civilian infrastructure. Illegal occupation and looting. Soldiers documented occupying civilian homes, looting personal belongings, and exploiting occupied properties. Participation in the blockade of Gaza. The soldiers played an active role in enforcing a blockade that deprived civilians of essential goods such as food, water, and medical supplies. Targeting civilians. Audio and visual evidence show soldiers deliberately attacking non-combatant individuals, including medical personnel and journalists. So that's pretty bad. All of it's bad, but that would be very specifically bad. Use of inhumane warfare tactics, indiscriminate bombing campaigns, starvation, and the systematic destruction of civilian infrastructure were all a part of their actions. Key figures in the complaint. Over 1,000 soldiers, all of whom have been identified individually. Among them are high-ranking officers and commanders responsible for planning and executing military operations in Gaza. Numerous individuals with dual citizenship, including 12 from France, 12 from the US, 4 from Canada, 3 from the United Kingdom, and 2 from the Netherlands. And several soldiers who have openly boasted about their war crimes on social media, sharing photos and videos of their participation in the destruction and occupation of Palestinian homes and properties. The complaint is the largest ever submitted to the ICC. It's a milestone in documenting Israeli war crimes for future generations. We're establishing a historical record that will ensure these individuals are remembered and held accountable. Supports the efforts of ICC prosecutor Karim Khan. And I'm trying to think, there's not a section here about its jurisdiction. And so those are just a few examples. The big one, but one example of an individual action, taking place in, I think it was Ecuador. Here's another one going after Moshe Tetro. He's a IDF colonel. More IDF soldiers in Amsterdam face urgent arrest for Gaza war crimes. These are two individuals. Their photos in the video version here. Filed a complaint demanding the immediate arrest and prosecution of 3 IDF soldiers who entered Amsterdam yesterday. These individuals involved are Yehuda Sva, Yotam Shmulevich, and Liran Magal, members of the LATAC unit of the 932 Granite Battalion, accused of engaging in the destruction of civilian properties in Gaza without any military necessity. So one of these is, here's some jurisdiction they laid out for this case. The Geneva Convention. So under Article 53 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, prohibits the destruction of property by the occupying power unless absolutely necessary for military operations. They're saying it's not justified under that. Article 147 of the Fourth Geneva Convention defines extensive destruction and appropriation of property not justified by military necessity and carried out unlawfully and wantonly as a grave breach of the convention. So they're saying it's illegal under the Geneva Conventions and the ICC Rome Statute. They're calling on the Dutch government to act swiftly in response to our complaint. I'm trying to find the jurisdiction here. And I don't see, I mean, they say why it's illegal under the Geneva Convention and the Rome Statute, but are they saying that Amsterdam, that Holland, that the Dutch are supposed to arrest these people? Are they Dutch citizens, dual citizens, or are they just saying that IDF soldiers who are Israeli citizens entered Amsterdam on leave or something like that? I don't exactly know. That's why let's go to the ICC website and we look under jurisdiction. The court may exercise jurisdiction in a situation where genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes were committed on or after July 1st, 2020 or 2002, and the crimes were committed by a state party national, which Israel is not. That's why I'm saying, are they, a citizen of the Netherlands or another country that is a party to the Rome Statute? Or in this territory of a state party? Well, I don't think that Israel or Palestine are parties to the Rome Statute. Or in a state that has accepted the jurisdiction of the court. Again, I know that Israel hasn't. Or the crimes were referred to the ICC prosecutor by the United Nations Security Council pursuant to a resolution adopted under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. So I don't think either of those apply. Maybe they do in this last situation we were just talking about with these two IDF soldiers. Looking a little bit more into this, I mean, I've already covered the ICC on a previous episode, so I'm not really going to belabor it. But if you want to, I'll put a link in the show notes page to the About page for the ICC, how the court works, so you can kind of explore that to yourself. And here's the list of countries that are signatories. The United States is not among them. And in the Q&A, is the U.S. a member of the ICC? The U.S. is not a state party to the Rome Statute here under humanrightswatch.org. But if we go through and these are all European states. I'm looking at the list now. I just don't see that Palestine is a member state. I don't even know if Palestine is considered to be a state, according to the UN. Under P. Yeah, I don't see Palestine there. Israel is not there. So, Anyways, yeah, well, I just wanted to jump on and do a short little episode about this. I'll put the links in the show notes page so you can see this, but it's just a very interesting development that will be good to keep an eye on to see how this develops and see if it's a viable point. Now, again, I, I, how I feel. I've talked about in shows past about how I feel about this situation. Obviously, tend to be more pro-Palestinian civilian. But I do also believe that you can't just wantonly go about witch hunting people. So I do believe that this is at least the portion where these activist organizations are filing complaints in official, in real courtrooms and going through the legal process and showing evidence. That is something I definitely support because, you don't help the cause either by just blanket going after people in witch hunts either, because then people don't take you seriously. People get mad and defensive about it. Of course, certain people will get mad and defensive about going through the judicial process, but if there is a process to be gone through that is a serious effort, it should be going through the judicial process. So at any rate, with good faith arguments, good faith arguments that are not frivolous. Just saying that too. So, okay, vitaldescent.com / it should be 280, the episode number here. We will catch you next time. Probably not before Christmas, but maybe. But if it's not before Christmas, Merry Christmas, everybody. I really appreciate your support. And just to read off everyone that supports us at our membership website, vitaldescent.club. That's the URL. Special thanks to Chandler, to Andre, to Philip, to Jesse, to Jan or Jan, Andreas, G. Cross, Virginia, Scott, Troy, Nick, Melanie, Ovidiu, Adrian, Donald, Zygodactyl, Connor, Freeman, and Lee. Thank you all. Definitely appreciate your support.